next item on the agenda is discussion on possible revisions to the home occupation zoning regulations. This is a discussion for us with Mr. Dyer. It is not a public hearing portion. And the group home amendment and the fencing amendment will be public hearings, but this is strictly a discussion between us and Mr. Dyer as to what we think we might want to put into this. It's no ways near finalized. This is very much at the preliminary stage. Mr. Dyer.
Just would add to that the next step in this after discussion is staff puts together ordinances. We will then advertise them for public hearing at that point in time. That is the public hearing time. So there is a time and there will be a point in time to take public hearing on this, but since there is nothing to really look at this point in time because we haven't crafted the ordinances, because we need your all's input and some feedback on it. So just before we get into the specific issue, just to start off the conversation, back on January the 8th of this year, the City Council approved a motion directing you all as the Planning Commission to review 3 items: home occupations, group homes, and the fencing. The little bit about the process per state statutes as well as city ordinances. The City Council or the Planning Commission can initiate changes to your zoning chapter, which is chapter 74 of the City Code. Once those are initiated, you all as the Planning Commission provide direction and guidance to staff as to how you'd like to see those things crafted, and then staff crafts those items. We put out a public notice, and anybody that has interest in it that has said they want notice from us, we'll be happy to provide that to them in regards to letting folks know when the time is for the public hearing to the Planning Commission. You all have that planned public hearing, and then send it on to the City Council with the recommendation of approval or denial. Then the City Council, they can either accept your recommendation or make suggestions of changes and send it back to you all, and then you all will review it again. And then once it goes back to the City Council the second time, then the City Council can take whatever action they would see fit and modify it in any way that they see fit. So with that, the first item is the home occupations. Again, staff really wanted to have a conversation with you all, get some direction as to where you wanted to go with it. Staff does have some ideas based upon our current code and based upon things we've seen in other cities. So we're about ready to have that discussion. Then the next 2 items, the group home and the fencing, are kind of different in that staff, for both of those items, had a very clear direction as to where they needed to go. So we've already drafted ordinances for those. And when we get to those 2 items, I will more clearly tell you why we already have ordinances drafted for those. Again, for 2 different reasons, but we're fairly confident that in both cases, those are the ordinances that need to go forward. So, on to home occupations. Looking at the home occupations, staff has received, staff as well as Planning Commission, I don't know Planning Commissioners, but as well as City Council members have received comments in regards to our home occupations. We've received comments from both residents as well as from folks who have home occupations. Really, the comments from the residents come really center around one major thing. We get lots of questions, say, hey, what's going on in my neighbor's house? What are they doing? We get lots of those questions, and because with our home occupations, they've registered with us and things like that, we're able to provide residents with answers as to what's going on in the neighborhood. So we get lots of questions, we can answer those questions, but concerns and complaints that we get about home occupations really center around traffic generation. Home occupations, some of them do have visitors or customers come on site, and there's complaints about where those folks park at. Perhaps they're parking in the street, taking up the normal spaces that the residents use and things like that. So really parking and traffic are probably the biggest residential concern we get about home occupations. From the home occupation operator side of things, the comments that we get are that our home occupation regulations are somewhat onerous, difficult, and expensive. And really what that centers around is currently we have 2 types of home occupations: home office and then what we also call home occupation. Home office is a little bit less intense. It's somebody essentially with an office at their house doing low-level work, bookkeeping, computer programmer or something like that. And the requirement to get that conditional use permit from the city is that you have to notify everybody within 200 feet of your property that you're doing a home occupation. Not only that, you also have to do it return receipt requested, which is about $5 a pop, $5 to $6 a pop. And if you're in a residential area, you could have a lot of folks you got to notify. You do have the option to go around knocking on doors and getting folks to sign on stuff. So it is cumbersome and onerous. And then for those folks who are in home office but are home occupation, a much higher intensive home occupation, the things you've seen are things like bakeries, beauty salons, items like that. Those folks have to come to you all as a planning commissioner. So that's, again, a pretty high bar that folks have to do. They have to, again, notify everybody within 200 feet and then come to the planning commission for their approval. So when we were looking and getting some ideas and suggestions for you all, what we staff were looking for was wanting to make it simpler and easier. We want to make our home occupation regulations simpler and easier for all to understand. We wanted to not affect or change existing home-based businesses. We have a number of home-based businesses, I believe about 39 if I recall, and we wanted to let those folks continue to operate in the manner they are, and perhaps even make it a little bit more straightforward for them to comply with city regulations and things like that. I also want to account for the fact that you have a commercial use that's occurring in residential zoning. I think that's important to understand and comprehend that residential zoning is exactly that. When folks buy into an R1 district, which is our permanent residential zoning district, they have an expectation that the uses around them in an R1 district are going to be residential. Commercial uses, we have zoning for commercial uses. We have commercial office, we have commercial retail. So those types of uses are typically expected to be in those zoning districts. So we want to recognize and account for the fact that we have a commercial use that's occurring within a residential zoning district. And then the last one is to balance the needs of the neighborhood, of the business person, as well as the city. Each one of those three have things that they need to accomplish within these regulations. So again, it's very difficult to see. I apologize for that. But what we're trying to do is we really think, first of all, we'd like to rename our home occupations. We'd like to call them home-based businesses. And within there, we'd like to have two demarcations, have what's called a home profession, and then what's called a home occupation. And really, the two differences in there is a home profession is going to be something that's the least intrusive type of place. It's going to be something that's a programmer, a writer, an accountant, a lawyer, a consultant, something like that. Kind of the big bright lines things is that they will not have clients or visitors come to on site. They won't have any other employees. Also don't have any sales tax generation, so there won't be any retail sales on there. So that's the home profession. Very low footprint in regards to use and their effects on the neighborhood. Towards that, and we'd also like to suggest or have you contemplate have this be no requirement to notify your neighbors. Again, no requirement for everybody within 200 feet. Again, the idea of that is that this is a very low use, not going to have a large impact on the neighborhood. And also have this be administrative approval. So that's one area. And then the second one on the home occupation, this is a much more intensive use. This is going to be perhaps the manufacturers of craft goods or things, again, like bakery, woodcraft, stuff like that. This is also we have a number of contractors, electrical contractor, plumbing contractors. This was where they would fit into. A change from what we currently do, we would perhaps have you all consider to allow them to have one employee that's out of the home. This is something we have looked at all our community regulations within our neighbors, and this is one thing that most of our neighboring cities, they allow to have one employee. We have limit the number of visitors. You could have 10 visitors a day at the place. However, at no time could you have more than 3 at one time. Again, we're trying to weigh in the concerns about the amount of traffic and parking that occurs in there. will still weigh in with the need for a home business to have visitors come there, to have folks perhaps view their work, view our work, have a discussion about, a piano lesson and things like that. So we do think they're trying to strike a balance between those things. And to go along with that, if they are gonna have visitors, if they are gonna have folks come to their place, they would need to provide city staff with a verification of site plan that they have ample off-street parking. That could be accomplished by a driveway. We're definitely not requiring anybody to build a parking lot, but we just want to have them show that they can demonstrate that they have the ability to park guests and visitors off the street. Again, this would be only a single family, a duplex type thing. I'm going to jump back up to the home office real quick. The home profession. Currently, the City of Merriam regulations don't allow any home occupation, whether it be a home office or any type, in anything but a single family house. Again, the staff thinks that should be broadened, especially for the home profession folks. If it's an apartment complex or something like that, so they should be able to have a home profession here. So, but back down to the home occupation again, be a single family or a duplex type of place. They would have to notify property owners within 200 feet that they are going to have a home occupation there. We would suggest not having it done by return receipt request, just simply by first class mail, and then provide us with verification. They can simply make a copy of the envelopes, or we can have them sign an affidavit saying that they have signed it. They can sign an affidavit saying that they have mailed everything out. And then kind of the last thing, and this would be a change again, be an administrative approval. Again, getting back to those concerns that we had from home occupation operators, that going through that long process, and it is a long process to come to the Planning Commission. It is a long process. So we'd have it be at the administrative approval level. So along those lines, some of the things, I really didn't put things in here that really are going to change. We would still say that recommend that the be 5 years that these folks have these permits. Again, they wouldn't be conditional use permits anymore; they'd be accessory uses. So that they essentially have 5 years that they have for this registry. They automatically renew unless we get complaints. That's exactly how we operate it now. They automatically renew unless we get complaints. So I think it's also I need to point out that the notification of the neighbors within 200 feet, that is not. The neighbors can't say, we don't like it, they can't have it. Again, we already require home occupations to notify within 200 feet. All it is giving the opportunity for neighbors to provide any kind of concerns that they may have about it. It doesn't give the neighbors the veto power on a home occupation. So with all that, we happy to answer questions, have a conversation with you all about this.
I'll start with a little one, and then everybody else can chime in, because I'm sure they'll have more. Your first item on home occupation, where your arts and crafts type of goods manufactured at the home with equipment found in a typical residence, that equipment found in a typical residence is not going to work. One of the reasons is being a lot of things, and my bailiwick is a good example with the stained glass or with glass of that type. You're using kilns, you're using all types of other equipment that's not normally found within the residential home. You have the same type of thing if you're going to a massage, someone that does massage. Most of the equipment that they use in the way of the beds and things are not typical residential materials. So I think that would need to come out.
And the staff would say there most likely need to be a replacement. Otherwise, and I think the replacement language could be something along the lines of volume and things like that. Because when we start taking that out there, and suddenly folks start bringing industrial level equipment, and they will be. We've had requests for that. So that's not atypical.
Then the wording should probably be something to the effect that goods manufactured at home with no visible or audio audible sounds of such manufacturing outside of outside of the walls of the home. That would do the same thing.
Okay.
Most industrial would require like a 480 volt too, which would be a whole different service for
Right,
residential.
right.
That is correct. And if somebody came in for an application for that, we'd definitely ask lots of questions.
Big questions.
Welding.
Yes, we do ask those questions. A little bit towards that also, and it's in your packet. We also would suggest that there be not allow commercial type of trash on here. I don't think any residential is a proper location for a trash dumpster to be out there.
Right.
So that was something else that we would clarify in there. And again, that is something that's within our current home occupation rules, but it's not clear, it is not definitive like that.
Next?
Yes, I would like to discuss the visitors and employees coming to the home, the hours. Our existing codes are Monday through Saturday, 7 to 9. And in this one, you've got 7 to 7, Monday through Friday. And we have a number of hair salons, massage people, chiropractic. I think it's by appointment only. But we have several businesses that I would think their patrons would come on a Saturday when they're at work.
That's an excellent point. And the reason we changed it was a little bit kind of to address some of the concerns about traffic and things like that. But that is an excellent point, and staff certainly would take directions from the Planning Commission as to how you'd like to see those hours stated.
But I think to change something on them now, when they've been in business maybe for a number of years, I don't feel that it would be fair to them
And,
as a business owner.
right, and staff we certainly can go back to what the current language is. I think that would be a big concern.
I think that'd be appropriate.
Okay.
Just so everybody knows, because we haven't been around when we was doing this that much, some of you haven't. Just because I say something doesn't mean you have to agree with me. So if you don't like what I say, speak up. I'm just another one of you when we're talking about this stuff. Who's next?
In the home professions, would there be like a minimum threshold for number of days? So like if I work from home, one day a month or something, I probably don't have to do this, but if I...
That's an excellent point. And certainly is not, right now, staff would probably suggest, we do that right now already. When folks call us up saying, hey, I'm working at home, I'm at home 2, maybe 3 times a week, and stuff like that. Do I need to get licensed? Staff uses this discretion to say, you know what, that is not your primary place of work. That's not your primary location. We don't need a business license from you. That's the way staff would still handle these situations. We wouldn't think, again, I think the way we would look at it is this where you spend all your time at? Is this your primary office? Do you have another office that you may go to outside? So those are things we've talked through, and again, we already handle those situations, and we just don't require them because we don't think that's our primary workplace.
Okay.
I think maybe you may want to think about adding some wording in here somewhere to the effect that even though you may be employed by an outside company, if you work from home on a better than 50% basis, you would be considered a home occupation. Somehow you need to get that in there because there are a lot of people that are employed by an outside company that still work from home.
Right. I think what staff would like to do is kind of the wording is this is your primary location. This is where you work out of. Staff would like to keep the ability. I think it'd be especially for the folks that do work out of their house, to say 50%. It's very hard, and I'd like to think that we do handle that right now, and we don't get complaints about folks about the way we're handling it. They seem to think that we're being fair about it. But I think the thing to add in there is words about primary, only location. This is your only office. I think we can add wording like that in there.
Yeah.
Would you define that by hours? Like,
1,200 hours
Well,
a year.
what I'm
would
getting,
be-
what I'm getting at is not so much how many hours you work there, but
I know-
I've got a neighbor that works for, I'm not even sure who he works for, but he works from home 90% of the time. I mean, really, truly 90% of the time. He has a home profession, but because he's paid and works for another company, he may not think that this applies to him. That's all I'm getting at, is making it clear that no matter who you work for, if you're doing your work from this home, this applies to you. That's all I'm getting at.
And again, we already have those situations, and our response is, is this your primary location? Is this your only location? And things like that. And I think we don't have people getting us complaints about it. I think we do a fairly good job of using our discretion on that. So I think adding language in regards to primary, only, I think that gets to these issues of trying to address, the person only works 1, maybe 2, 3, 4, 3 days out of the week at home versus the person that's there 24/7, 365.
Well, that's why I was looking at maybe some type of wording that says that home profession refers to any person who works from their home, whether they are a sole proprietor or an employee of an outside company.
And our current definition.
Just that, not trying to get into how many hours or any of that type of stuff.
Right, and our current
How do
definition.
you prove if it's primary or secondary or
Well, and that's what,
semi-area or?
well, yeah, that's what I mean.
There's no way to prove that.
In our current definition, essentially says a home occupation means a business, profession, occupation, or trade conducted wholly or in part within a residential building. I think within that, we would add some qualifiers that, again, go back to primary, only, trying to put more definition to it, more meat on the bones on that issue, because that is an issue that we've kind of bounced around, but putting a hard, bright line of so many hours or so many percentage, I think, would do a disservice to the folks trying to just work out of the house.
Well, and I see Carol's point because, I used to work 2 days a week at home and I worked for the federal government. So, it doesn't have to be another company. It could be another government entity or organization or whatever. But I regularly work 2 days a week at home and did the same things that I did in the office. But
All I'm trying to do is just be sure that if somebody's working from home and they were working for themselves, they'd be caught with this. Well, if they're working for another company or for the government or something and working at home, they ought to be caught by it also.
right, and
That's all I'm
rather than to
getting.
get like a code violation or something like that, it's
Yeah.
just nicer if the ordinance would read in a way so that they would know this applies to me, yay or nay,
Right, and that's what we're shooting for. Another thing that staff would like some input on is regarding, right now, everybody that has a home occupation gets a conditional use permit from us. So we know all the home occupations that are out there. And as I mentioned before, that this provide a benefit for the neighborhood as well as the person that has a home occupation, because when we get calls, questions, we can readily provide the answers and provide the information, which helps both the neighborhood as well as the actual home occupation person, because then we don't have to start a code case or start reviewing to see what exactly is occurring at that location. So as we as we're fleshing out this, one of the ideas that I already mentioned is call them these accessory uses, so it'd be an administrative approval, so folks won't have to come to planning commission again, avoid that longer process. Is there discussion about should home professions still provide like a registration with the city, should still provide some sort of, again, like a simple form of, we wouldn't look to charge them any money or anything like that, but just a simple form to provide information to the city in regards to this is, I have a home profession, I have a home office, my contact information is this. What's your thoughts on that? Because there's some thoughts that maybe that's information that's perhaps too much for the city. There's other thoughts that that's information that, again, as I mentioned earlier, information that neighborhoods and neighbors find beneficial, as well as the home occupation person may also find somewhat beneficial. So what's the planning commission's thought on that?
I'd like to say that I applaud the separation of the two, home profession and home occupation, because obviously home occupation invites a lot of the issues that people call you about, traffic and what's going on at this location. I think it's a reach for the city to go in and say, what are you doing in your house? I really do. It's if they're not causing any noise or trouble, it's really none of your neighbors' concern what you do or don't in your home. And so I think we need to think long and hard. If we separate this, if someone wants to voluntarily tell you that they're doing that, that's good. But to create an ordinance that makes that so, I'd like to know how you're going to enforce it. I'd like to know how in the world you're going to say you are or you're not doing it.
Sure. A couple things. Right now, we already do that. So right now, those folks already go through a much more continuous process. So folks already have to do that. We will get questions from folks for even a home office. Yes, I can guarantee you, I will get calls. We get calls from neighbors wanting to know what's going on at the neighbor's place. At their neighbors.
And what do they? Excuse me. What do they ask you about?
We see lots of people coming and going. We see, he or she leaves at odd hours. You'd be surprised at the interest neighbors have in what goes on with the neighbors.
And this not being rush hour, your answer is, it's not of our concern?
No. In that situation, we can easily call it, hey, this is 1, 2, 3, 4 Goodman. Yeah, they have a home office. They're registered with us. They're fine. And so, and again, understanding both sides of the argument. The other part of it is, if folks don't have to register with the city in a home office, a home profession, there will be a lot of, so obviously they will be self-selecting. Meaning they will go on the internet, figure out which category they fall into. I can guarantee you folks are going to self-select for the majority of them into, they may be the home occupation, they'll self-select to the home profession. I will guarantee you that. Simply because they don't want to tell anybody what's going on. And then again, we will get questions about the activity that's there. Providing some sort of, again, very minimal information in regards to the activity allows the interaction to occur between the city and the home occupation operator of, okay, what are you doing here? Okay, you are a home profession, just need you a little bit of information, contact, that all you are as a programmer or something like that. You're good to go. Or, hey, you really are the higher level home occupation. I need a site plan for you. I need some other information for you. So that is also a reason that there would be for having registration of both. Is because if you allow folks to self-select, I can guarantee you they will pick the one that they don't have to do much interaction with the city.
Well, society at large allows a lot of things self-select. Do you pay your sales tax? Do you for internet purchases? Do you pay your license fee to get? There's a lot of things that are put on us as a voluntary basis. This seems to really start to be an intrusion into the privacy of our homes and what we do in our homes. And if an accountant becomes a problem, this world's in trouble.
And again, let's be clear. We already do that.
Well,
and the other
maybe
part,
we shouldn't.
I understand and there is both sides of it. And definitely staff sees both sides of it. That's the reason why we asked the question. Yeah. So.
And I'm just expressing my opinion. I realize we all are going to have a way of addressing this.
And so again, just if folks self-select there, you will find there will be folks that will put themselves in the wrong category. Oh, and the other point I was making, that's what it was. again, going back to the point that these are non-residential uses occurring within a residential zone district. That really, I think, goes back to the core argument for having home occupations and having some level of acknowledgement and a level of interaction with the city, because again, this is not what the zoning is for. The zoning is for residential. So, but again, understand the argument that there should be. Definitely understand. I'll hear from other people, because this is an important part of how we're going to craft these.
Well, I gotta say, I completely agree with Bill. I mean, it just seems like really should not be any concern of the city. If you're there working from home, I mean, so if you're a housewife, you're working from home. So are you required to register if you're a housewife? I agree with that completely. But my main concern was, back to the home occupation, was no more than 10 arrivals and 10 departures per day. That seems like a lot. Is that normal for surrounding communities?
Yes, it is. That's taken exactly from, yep, sure is. And that's where that is the standard for the other communities.
I noticed on here that for home occupations, it's one business per resident. Home profession, you can have two, right? Did I read that correctly?
The home profession, really, there was no limit on that. The home occupation, there is.
But could
yes.
you have one occupation, home occupation, and one home professional?
Certainly
in the
could.
same resident?
Sure, certainly could.
Sure, they did. They had stainless and contract engineering.
Yeah, certainly could.
Yeah, quite easy. Anyone else?
Well, I'll voice my opinion. Brian is 100% correct. It's human nature to take advantage of whatever you can take advantage of. Seems to be more the norm now than it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Does the city really want to sit down and strap regulations on homeowners or whatever? Not really, but there has to be some governance somewhere to ensure that the protection of property and patrons and whatever are maintained. You can have a neighbor that could be working out of his house, but in his basement, he's performing different activities that are pretty dangerous. I think the city and law enforcement would need to enact and take care of that. The only way that would transpire would be as if people were going in and out and whatever, and a call was made. And I think it is the responsibility of the city to investigate whatever level that inquiry is. I'm certain that a lot of the people out here would want that protection. That's public protection. That's what the city is basically guaranteeing to their citizens. But it is human nature to not want people to know what you're doing. I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, but it's just human nature. And we have to have protection to our citizens, and that's my opinion.
One of the things that I think we need to take a look at real closely, that you've done a lot on it, but I don't know if it's enough, and that's talking about contractors working from home. That, I think, is one of the banes of the existence of this stuff, is the contractor that works, and he's got 2 or 3 people that come in every morning in the park, and they leave in the trucks, and there they park for the day out on the street or whatever, and all kinds of other things. He's got a garage full of equipment or supplies or stuff like this that get loaded in the morning and unloaded in the evening. And we may want to take a real good hard look at how that, we want to put some more restrictions on that.
We have, and one of those things is that they can't dispatch from the house, which is exactly the situation you were describing, where just take a contractor where 3 or 4 workers that show up and park their vehicles there and leave from the house. That's dispatching from the house. It wouldn't be, that is something that currently would not permitted, and it still would not be permitted. We're also continuing and more clarifying that there should be no outside storage of any kind of equipment. There should be no visible storage of any type of equipment outside of the home. So
Well, I want to add supplies to that also,
right, and supplies. Excuse me. Right.
because supplies isn't on here.
Right.
So if your son runs a mowing business and has a little trailer with a mower on it, that would be considered not allowed?
No, that's an excellent question. If that fits within our trailer regulations and he maintains them, that's perfectly acceptable. And I'm again,
Well, you said motorized equipment, and I'm concerned that, I don't have a cat in this fight, but
no.
I'm just wondering when we say no vehicles or motorized equipment not found at a residential home, well, I don't have a big power mower that I ride on all over, but.
No, we understand exactly that, because we do have contractors that have trailers and things like that. The regulations we can easily, and we'll put in there stating that any trailers or things like that have to meet our trailer regulations. So that's where they fit into. As long as they meet the trailer regulations, they're fine.
Well, and there is a wide variety, because I've known someone who started their machine shop in the garage out in the suburbs, and they get the lathe and all the things that machinists use, and they're taking orders, and filling orders and all that, and nobody's coming to their house, but it would probably get pretty loud, I have a feeling, if those machines are going. But, something like that, you wouldn't normally have all those things that machinists use in their shop. You might have one thing for woodworking or something like that, but you wouldn't have a garage full of things to manufacture small metal parts or, things like that.
Well, that's why I suggested, rather than the wording up here about equipment found in typical residence, since what you're worried about is audio and visual, that you don't use the wording about what kind of equipment, but the fact that no equipment can be visible or be heard outside of the walls of the home.
Right.
That takes care of it. He can have his equipment in the basement or in the garage, as long as he's got it soundproofed enough where it doesn't bother anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing that gives people pause is the advertising that you address in here. And we might want to think about how to handle the shrink wrap all vehicle wraps.
Yes, we already have that.
Oh, okay, good.
We have that on our radar. Yes.
Because
Yes.
that's becoming real popular,
Right.
and as it's become more affordable, and I think that's something that it really stands out when you have a vehicle that's just covered in one giant decal. Versus a little sign with their name and phone number and not there. Yeah,
Yes, exactly, yes.
What we do, we're turning our head to look the other way. So we have to have these regulations that involve trailers on the street with trash in them and stuff like that. All of our trailer regulations and all of our other regulations. I think it's important to keep our city the way it is.
So towards that end, looks like we're trying to wrap things up here. You guys, you all gave me a lot of information. I can definitely work on crafting some ordinances to address these things. I will tell you right now, obviously, the issue of home professions, whether they need any kind of registration with the city, is going to be a topic for discussion. We'll definitely craft the regulations such that that's easily modified either way. I can just tell you right now, it's going to include that in there, that they need to register. But if there's a desire for the planning commission to remove it, it will be easily removed. I can definitely make it that, craft the regulations in such a fashion that it won't be difficult if there's a majority of planning commissioners who desire to remove that section. Does that seem fair? Does that seem appropriate?
I agree.
Okay. I have plans to hopefully have this on the March agenda. Well, it is complicated. It really is not a lot of putting stuff together. So I have desires to get it on the March agenda. So I would tell you this, whether or not I get it completely done for the March agenda, we will public hearing it for the March agenda. So if there's a desire to make comments in March, there will be opportunity to make comments. But it may not be, the ordinance in that time of March may not be ready for you all to take, make a recommendation to the city council at that time. So, again, thank you.
Item 4,